So what would you wear if you were up for an award? I mean, you'd want to look your best, obviously. And we're rolling out here the red carpet for a dazzling parade of some of the most head-turning houses British architecture and design has to offer. We're exploring the incredible homes longlisted by the Royal Institute of British Architects for the 2021 House of the Year Award. Long, isn't it? So far, we've seen some houses that take you by surprise. Wow, a brick bombshell. And some homes that showcase superb materials and craftsmanship. That is quite something. In today's episode, we're looking at a category of houses that solve problems.
It's fast-flowing, aggressive water. You really have to be very careful not to lose your footing.
Get swept away.
Absolutely.
At the end of the episode, we'll find out which of these incredible buildings have been shortlisted by the judges from the Royal Institute of British Architects.
It's extraordinary, it's a beautiful thing.
Then, at the end of the series, we'll announce the winner of the 2021 House of the Year Award. So, stand by to be starstruck by the architectural A-list. And the best thing is, you don't even have to get dressed. We're halfway through our Access All Areas tour of this year's long list. So far, 4 buildings have made it onto the shortlist. The Water Tower, an industrial relic reborn as a futuristic high-rise home. House on the Hill, a shape-shifting, shadowy extension to a Georgian farmhouse. The small but perfectly formed Slot House. And House for Theo and Oscar, which embodies the life-changing power of extraordinary engineering. But 5 more long-listed buildings are now standing by, ready to be explored. The buildings in this category are all problem solvers in their own way. Think of them as champion chess players or as master generals. Experts in tactics and strategy, able to overcome obstacles at every turn with brilliant ideas. Whether it's through a single stroke of genius or hours and hours of painstaking trial and error, these buildings have all taken on a challenge and not just risen to it, but transcended it. Visiting these inventive homes with me are the design expert and writer Michelle Agundahin.
It's incredibly beautiful. I mean, it's a sort of sculptural hat to your lovely building.
And the architect, Damien Burrows.
This is what it's all about, isn't it?
Living by the river is a dream for many of us. The idea of sitting back on the porch in the sunshine, soaking up the cooling breeze, watching swans drift by on the meandering current, observing the pleasure craft. In truth, though, the reality can be much more brutal, especially when the weather's bad. The rain sluices down, the river suddenly bursts its banks, and you find your house flooded, which is quite the set of problems, isn't it? That's what our first long-listed house has to contend with. It's on a floodplain by the River Loddon in Berkshire. This is River House. Long, isn't it? Long and tall, lifted above the riverbank on 2-meter stilts. This leggy supermodel of a building is dressed in shimmering silver cladding with a svelte, angular interior. It's a glamorous, glorious place to while away the hours. River House stretches a whopping 50 meters end to end. From west to east, there are 3 bedrooms, 2 studies, a terrace, and a large open-plan living space. There's also a guest bedroom with an ensuite tucked at the back. It's home to Tony, a semi-retired consultant surgeon, and Charlotte, who works in the art world. It's great. I can have a good nose at your house as I'm
Yeah,
walking.
well, I made sure all the beds are all tucked in.
At least on one side.
Yes.
Yes.
Both dreamed of retiring to the riverbank. But this maybe wasn't what they had in mind, although they seemed to enjoy it.
It's really exciting.
Absolutely.
Garden furniture, what do you do about that?
Well, that gets tied to the tree
It's tied to the tree.
and everything else gets put in the garage. So there's
Okay.
nothing, you cannot have anything under the house.
So it's a great way to enforce a kind of radical minimalism on the landscaping,
Actually, yes.
isn't it? You just...
And you can't plant anything, so gardening's a
Yeah.
wheeze, really.
You don't realise about flooding until you live in it. It's not like having a swimming pool at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
It's actually fast-flowing, aggressive water. If you come down the stairs into the flood, you really have to be very careful not to lose your footing.
Get swept away.
Absolutely. Wade to the car and then drive to the shops, fill up with bread and milk, and drive back and hope for the best.
And when you're 80 and 90, I mean, you're still going to do that? Is that the plan?
Not sure.
Is this a younger person's
I think
house?
so.
Perhaps,
Yes, it is.
perhaps haven't thought it through quite as well as we should have done.
The risk of drowning aside, River House is a practical home for later life. It's effectively a bungalow, just higher. It's effortlessly elegant too. Slimline steel columns lift the building above the flood level without breaking a sweat. Edgeless glass balustrades are so unobtrusive as to be almost invisible. Even the larch cladding seems to hang on without screws. I can't see a single fixing on it.
All those individual strips have fixings behind them. So the longer ones, which are 12 foot, each of those has 4 fixtures behind it and 3 men to put up one. Quite a palaver. While they were fixing them, it was taking so long, I did actually slightly lose my cool. I said, at this rate, it'll never be finished. Now, of course, it looks beautiful, and it does make a difference, actually, in the end.
It certainly does. The sharp lines of the cladding accentuate the building's long, straight silhouette. It's inspired by 20th century modernist pavilions that took advantage of steel frame technology to provide huge glass walls to let the landscape in. In this case, to one vast living space.
We have kitchen, dining, living all in one place.
Yeah.
So it's 3 rooms in one, really.
For an open-plan room, it's remarkably tidy. Kitchen clutter can be all hidden away in a nook at the far end. The fireplace is neatly tucked into a structural column. And the TV is... where exactly?
It was designed specially.
For one big telly! Yes.
It's great to watch, but you don't want to stare at it.
The fishermen across the river can watch the football or the cricket.
Quite easily.
Yeah.
But the real viewing experience is out there. This opening is vast.
It's 50 foot.
Well, that's quite big. In the architect's initial design, however, this spectacular vista was interrupted.
Originally, the roof would have been held up by steel columns, probably 4 or 6 of them. But it would just ruin the view, wouldn't it? But it did take me 6 months of looking at the design to notice the columns. So I'm a bit embarrassed about that because the redesign cost us 3 months.
How much did it cost in pound notes?
I actually have no
You know,
idea.
you know.
But to be
I
fair to say,
told you
a
yet.
lot.
I'm doing a rough calculation in my head into the tens of thousands.
Yeah, don't tell me, I'll get depressed.
Tony and Charlotte's expensive decision to replace the columns with invisible steel beams hidden in the roof and remaining 3 walls was worth every 1,000. Their hands-on approach was admired by the RIBA judges, who spotted their personal touch in the morning terrace they requested at the eastern end, and some of the interior details that echo the external cladding, like the run of bespoke birch plywood cabinets in the hall. It's like a runway rather than a hallway. These run all the way down.
They do, 34 metres of
Am I allowed
cupboard
to look
space.
in?
Yeah.
Not that one.
Yeah, I just did.
That's my cake.
And it's not only the joinery that carries you through this house. The lighting is driving you all the way down the building. It's like something from a science fiction movie.
We like the effect because it's just one strip.
Which takes you all the way down to the master bedroom at the far end. As every good modernist building does, River House separates public and private areas. An open-air terrace divides the main living space from the bedroom wing, which contains 2 private studies, complete with authentic mid-century furniture. Oh, at this point, I would do a piece to camera about 20th century retro recliners, big picture windows and fabulous views. But this house is too comfortable, too relaxing. River House is sufficiently original and creative while fitting a great modernist tradition. It belongs right now while drawing on a history of ideas. This house, you know, has many antecedents, all those beautiful villas and pavilions, long, stretched, rectangular objects in the landscape that engage effortlessly with their surroundings. The thing is, if you want to build in that idiom, you've got to add to the conversation. And boy, does this building do that. It is bigger, taller, longer. It truly goes above and beyond. We've seen one ingenious problem-solving home. 4 more to explore before we learn which of them will stay in the race to win House of the Year 2021. We all like the idea of getting away from it all, don't we, eh? Getting back to nature, living in the wilderness, relying only on our wits and ingenuity. But such a life does pose a set of practical problems. It's not even warm. Is anyone going to match? Our next problem-solving longlister defies the challenges of building in the middle of nowhere. Damien has travelled to the wild and remote northwest coast of Scotland to find it.
You can certainly understand why someone would fall in love with this landscape. But what drives you to build a house in this rocky, boggy, windswept wilderness?
And how do you get one here? Accessed only by an 8-mile-long steep single-track road, House in Assynt had to be built off-site and transported in small sections. A perilous journey, resulting in a beautifully crafted home, as striking on the outside as it is breathtaking within. A problem-solving home like no other. The house is built as 3 modules, each with a different function. The front pod is an open-plan living space. The largest of the rear pods houses a master bedroom with an ensuite, and the final pod is home to an additional bathroom and guest room. The owners are Phil and Heather, who discovered this area on a holiday in 2015 and fell in love with it.
I've always had a hankering to have a place somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and this is the middle of nowhere.
There's definitely, none of the attractions of an urban centre. Hi, Damien.
Hey.
How are you?
Hi.
Whoa, gosh.
Welcome to the wilderness.
Isn't it? It's gorgeous.
I think a lot of people say, why'd you do this? And the answer is, we just love this wilderness.
Did you know exactly what you wanted?
No, we had no idea what we wanted. We kind of knew we wanted to build something that felt right with the terrain.
When we met Mary, our architect, the first thing she said was, it's going to be a light touch house.
She clearly did have a vision very early on for what could be built, and she basically turned us onto it. And we came and looked at the plot and met Mary the same day. The first thing she did was to get down and smell the ground.
And why not let the soil and the grass speak? Having worked in the wild parts of Scotland for years, their architect, Mary Arnold Forster, is at one with remote landscapes and is passionate about protecting them.
Who am I to break ancient rocks? That's my feeling. I'm only here for a while, Let's make a point not to do it. And I managed to knit the building into between the 2 headlands without breaking rocks.
Mary did not disturb the rocks, instead resting the building on stilts, perched on a barely there concrete strip. Outside, the charred timber cladding is low-key, dark and waterproof, helping this new building disappear into its setting. But you cross the threshold into a world of light-filled luxury. The RIBA judges marvelled at the entrance hall, lined in pine and silver fir, which leads you gently to a show-stopping living room with a view to die for.
This is what it's all about, isn't it? Walking through the house and just getting to this position. I mean, you don't need anything else.
Yeah, we never tire of it. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. It does feel as if you're watching a movie sometimes.
It is, doesn't it?
I mean, the weather changes often, so that is reflected in what you're seeing out there all the time.
A place to de-stress. The process of building it, though, was anything but relaxing. To save time on site, the house was built in a factory 70 miles away in 13 sections. The problem lay in getting them to site.
The size of the modules were built according to the size of the road that they had to be transported on.
All built off-site and then all brought here on lorries.
One lorry.
One lorry, one driver. It's a single-track road and there are passing places, but we weren't too sure how anyone was going to pass that lorry. The driver's name was Ali and he took 2 modules up at one time, and we knew that if a wheel went off at any point he would not be able to get back on the road. But we saw the first load arriving and we couldn't quite believe that he'd managed to do it.
With their precious cargo delivered, the builders battled lashing wind and rain to assemble House in Assynt in just 4 days. An extraordinary human effort. The end result is a remarkably efficient building that now conserves energy. The tightly sealed timber structure makes for a snug, cozy living space, whatever the weather. Even the need for artificial light has been minimized. In the simple bathroom lit from a roof light over the bath, and the master bedroom, where there are floor-to-ceiling sliding doors.
This is lovely. It's really nice.
But there is a downside to living in this northerly spot.
It doesn't get dark until 2 o'clock in the morning and it will get light an hour later. It's the weirdest thing because you might be reading, let's say, till 11:30 and then you think, OK, I'm going to go to bed now. Turn off the light and it's still light outside, so it's really disconcerting.
To tackle the problem, Heather and Phil came up with a decidedly non-architectural solution.
We toyed for a long time with blinds and curtains and in the end just thought, you know what, this view is so fantastic and this clean line, we didn't want to spoil it.
In the end we thought, let's just put eye masks on when we go to sleep.
Eye curtains. Nice. Phil and Heather clearly love the building. House in Assynt has an honest, simple beauty entirely part of this rugged landscape.
Yeah, this may have been made 70 miles away, but this house is a masterclass in responding to its site. It's an ingenious solution to a raft of practical problems. Phil, Heather and Mary have succeeded in designing a home, having it fabricated and delivered to site and erected in just 4 days. And what is the most incredible thing? Well, it looks and feels like it's always belonged here.
Neighbours, they can get a bit too close sometimes, can't they? No offence to mine, Bernard and Julie are lovely, but neighbours are certainly people you don't want to fall out with. So here's the conundrum. How do you build a new home right next to other people without compromising their view or compromising your privacy? That's the big problem our next long lister has set out to solve. It's in Hove, a packed seaside town in Sussex. A place so popular that to find a piece of land to build on, you've got to think outside the box. This is somebody's back garden. I mean, how the heck they managed to squeeze a building in here, I don't know. This is the remarkable Hove House. Surrounded on all sides by overlooking neighbours, this low-to-the-ground building camouflages itself with a green roof and a black brick cloak. Inside, there's 5,000 square feet of glamorous minimal living space. It was built by a property developer, Paul, and his wife, Maria.
I considered pursuing architecture as a profession, but discovered quite early on I neither had the talent nor the patience to go and qualify. So the next best thing was sort of commissioning architecture.
I think I don't have the same passion for architecture that Paul has.
She does get a little bit bored me dragging around building after building on holiday, saying, "Oh, this is amazing."
Don't get bored. I like that.
Paul's gone all out to commission the most incredible building he can, starting with a cunning layout that overcomes the limitations of the overlooked sloping backyard site. To the front is a quiet bedroom wing from which you step up to the kitchen, diner, living rooms and master bedroom, which wrap around a pool courtyard at the centre. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Maria.
Yes.
Kevin. Paul. Good to meet you. It's an amazing spot.
Yeah, we love it.
So if you'd done the conventional thing and taken your site and put a house in the middle of it, how many dwellings could you see from here?
Maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's dense
Yeah.
around here.
OK, so you'd be able to see into 8 or 9 houses?
Yes.
That's remarkable. And they into yours, of course,
Yeah.
as well.
We're very mindful of our neighbours and we wanted to make sure it wasn't an imposition.
Far from imposing, the U-shaped layout allows the house to politely turn its back on those around it and magics a secluded sanctuary within. My favourite spaces are cloisters and courtyard gardens, and this is a house built around a courtyard.
I love houses to be, the word I use is monastic, that sort of sense of peace, tranquility, stillness, good for your soul.
So the house should do what nature does, which is reduce your metabolic rate, blood pressure, all of that.
Absolutely right, yeah.
The RIBA judges loved the seamless flow between the tranquil courtyard and the indoor living spaces, which are every bit as soothing. Wow. Oh, that's nice. The kitchen is monastically minimal. Open, light and perfectly white with a simple polished concrete floor. And the architects played some nice tricks to establish the same relaxed atmosphere as outside, repeating elements of the building. A lot of rhythms, the rhythms of the 1, 2, 3, every third pane there's a post, so you get a rhythm of the window frames and the posts, and they in turn repeat the line.
Carefully controlled.
Yeah, carefully controlled, yeah. In the rhythms of the windows and the geometry of the exposed roof trusses, Hove House is organised with a glorious precision. All that is beautiful is placed on show, while all the functional stuff is hidden. The glamorous kitchen pod secretes a utility room within its heart. To build this remarkable home took 15 months, and it wasn't an easy journey.
As I'm told by the contractors, 2 of the wettest winters on record. And we're on clay where we are here, so we managed a first on the site where one of our ground workers got trench foot.
In his rubber boots?
In his rubber boots. Something we thought had finished after the First World War, resurfaced in Hove.
Yeah, I thought only sheep got that. Wow. The visionary behind this house is the award-winning architect Carl Turner, who started to design it not as Paul's family home, but something else entirely.
Paul had bought this site because he's a developer, and we were tasked with building a 4,000 square foot home, which would be sold on the market. The penny dropped that this could be like a perfect forever home for them. When it flipped from being a development into his own house, he started putting more money into it because, you know, if it's for yourself, you can see the value of having, you know, that extra thing that you wanted.
One of the extra things that the design nut Paul desperately wanted was a set of door handles designed by the god of modernism, the architect Mies van der Rohe, for a scheme he never built. Paul commissioned a specialist foundry to cast them, using the ancient lost wax method.
And here are his handles. Oh my goodness me. Oh, that feels really good. Curved at the back to accommodate the roll of the hand. Edge here for the thumb to kind of press against the flat surface. Nice action too. God truly is in the detail.
Every inch of this former development project now bears Paul and Maria's fingerprints. Simple, minimal living spaces have been personalised with sweet chestnut interior cladding. They've even added an extra 1,000 square feet to the original floor plan to form a private master bedroom wing. But more than that, when Paul and Maria decided to make Hove House their own, they gave it soul.
In my experience, when you change a project halfway through, when you shift direction midstream, that's when things go horribly wrong. It involves usually an overspend and a finished building which is sort of half-cocked. But that didn't happen here. That didn't happen here, I think, partly because of Paul's brilliance, but also because of Carl's genius as an architect. And as a result, this building exudes beauty and that monastic stillness that Paul wanted. And privacy, too. And these are qualities that you can't just buy. This isn't checkbook architecture. This is what happens when you produce something from the heart.
So, that's 3 houses that have faced difficult challenges and wrestled them to the floor. But 2 problem-solving homes remain, before we discover which of them the judges have shortlisted for House of the Year 2021.
The trouble with us humans is we love to improve things. We like to add and add in an attempt to try and make things better all the time. But of course, it is so easy to take things too far. I mean, to not exercise judgment. And then you're left with what? I mean, something that's actually pretty atrocious. Far better to respect the integrity of the original idea.
But how do you respect the integrity of an ancient, crumbling farm building when you're trying to turn it into a 21st century home? Michel is in deepest Devon, where our next longlister has found the solution. This is the Out Farm, a barn conversion like no other. It keeps the openings of the original building, where cattle came in and out, so it still has agricultural echoes. Yet inside, it resounds to the urbane glamour of a private members' club. It's home to Richard and Dawn, who fell for its romantic charm 8 years ago.
Well, when we first saw it, we could just glimpse it through the fog across the field. And it was just this sort of almost fairy tale feel to it, quite enchanted. These sort of ancient stone glimpsed through the trees of the copse. The spirit of the place was just got us straight away. It's just...
very castle-like.
Yeah.
Luckily for them, they have a son, Tom, who was in the process of qualifying as an architect. He could turn their vision into reality.
I think a really good piece of architecture is really disciplined and restrained. It's about honesty and expressing the new and old parts of the building. To kind of create a home for people you know so well was a joy to do.
Hello.
Hello
Hi.
there, you must be Richard.
Yeah.
And Dawn.
Hello.
And this is Tom, our son.
From this side, you really get a sense of the majesty of this barn.
But this noble building had fallen on hard times when Richard and Dawn first bought it.
There was no roof. Tops of the walls were falling down. There was no floor. There were trees growing up inside. But the walls were so solid, it had this feeling of solidity and longevity.
I just thought it had such an incredible feel. I felt so sure that it needed rescuing.
Within a few years, it would be beyond it, and it would, the walls would start seriously falling down.
Well, it's not falling down now. This is less barn conversion, more resurrection. The layout remains true to the original design, which was built into a bank for easy access to each floor. Downstairs, where cattle once lived, there are now 2 bedrooms, a bathroom and a kitchen. The upper level, originally used for threshing corn, is now a lounge and dining area with a study and shower room on either end. Just as it would have been 200 years ago, upstairs is one large open space, unbroken by interior walls.
I was not expecting it to be as light and open as it is in here. I mean, it's really airy. It's almost church-like.
When we first saw this, we saw a beautiful, large space. We wanted to retain that barn-like feeling to it.
And barn-like it remains, inside and out. They've respected the old shell by not making any new openings in the stonework, meaning they had to think cleverly about how best to use the natural light available.
We've only got 3 openings, really, to get the light in. So if you start sticking walls from plate down to floor, you're going to create a lot more darkness and not allow the light to bounce around.
We wanted to take as much light as we could from each opening. The frames are pushed right back to the sides of the walls.
The oak window frames are simple and functional. The lime-plastered walls are plain, the balustrades unfussy and hand-forged. Every element has a down-to-earth beauty in keeping with the past life of the place. In fact, the RIBA judges praised the way every new addition sensitively builds on the barn's history. But how do you create privacy in an authentically barn-like open space?
At one end, you've got the study area where we've divided it off, and the other box at the other end actually has a loo and a shower in it.
I mean, it allows you to sort of leave the whole envelope completely untouched, and you just inserted these little bits and then added your furniture.
This is future-proof design. These floating room dividers, crafted in lightweight sycamore, can easily be moved or removed in years to come. The barn could even house an extra mezzanine floor in future, thanks to the unusual design of the timber roof.
Usually on a building like this, I'd expect to see beams going across the width, because that's kind of shorter and it's easier.
The truss spans from gable to gable the kind of wrong way down the building rather than across. And that's basically very efficient, which means that all of the structure is pushed higher into the roof. It uses less timber and supports the roof in a very simple way. We wanted to get that ethos of simplicity, function and precise engineering that old barns kind of are known for.
I think it's incredibly beautiful. I mean, it's a sort of sculptural hat to your kind of lovely, solid building.
The challenge of making this original piece of architectural millinery fell to a local carpenter, Adam Milton, and his team, who hand-built the frame from Douglas fir.
For us, it was really pushing the boundaries of carpentry. We're still working by hand, using handheld machinery. We built it full size in the workshop. Then we dismantled the whole thing and brought it on a tractor and trailer, and then we forked it up onto the roof, temporary scaffold, and we built it piece by piece using a hand crane.
The result is an extraordinary fusion of traditional approaches and 21st century engineering design. That fusion continues downstairs. Simply furnished bedrooms and a minimal freestanding kitchen allow the barn's ancient features to shine. The half-rounded stone columns have been stabilized with new structural steel shoes.
They needed to be protected from falling over, so rather than putting nasty concrete lumps around them, which should have been quite big because of the engineering, the practice came up with the idea of these metal shoes, which we had made by a local blacksmith and do the job for us. So you keep the shape of the columns without spoiling it with you know, putting big bases around them.
Because they're so massive and yet they're very kind of beautiful and just sort of, they fit perfectly.
This loving and creative restoration was on a tight budget, which meant a family team effort. Richard took time off work, while Tom and his partner Sarah, who's also an architect, lived on site in a yurt, all while Dawn continued working 100 miles away.
How was it for you, Dawn?
Just come back every sort of Thursday night and just see how they were progressing. I didn't really feel that I could contribute very much, but you know, make sure that everybody was fed. And but it was so exciting. I couldn't wait to get here.
We did a lot of the work ourselves. I mean, I've been given the task of creating the shuttering so that when a lorry turns up with tens of tons of concrete and pours it into the floor, it doesn't all just flow out the door. Figuring out how to do that was probably the most stressful part of the thing. You know, if when it's pouring with rain or snowing outside, it was just knee-deep in mud. It could get a bit tetchy as well, but we had enough passion in it, I think, to push through that and just get on.
If you've worked really hard for something, it means so much more. It's a fantastic sense of achievement.
Through great skill and hard work, this building beautifully preserves the spirit of the original barn. This is a piece of architecture that's not only wonderful to live in, but it also lifts the spirits.
There's just one more of our problem-solving houses to see before we hear which of them the RIBA judges are adding to their shortlist for House of the Year 2021. Who wouldn't want to commission a beautiful, bespoke home for themselves, somewhere where every need is attended to, where your spirits are uplifted, where your heart is filled with joy? Thing is, of course, is that such a home is beyond the mere reach of us mortals, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of a proposition that none of us can afford. Or is it?
Our next longlister solves the problem of getting a bespoke, beautiful house on a standard budget. Damien's come to a 1960s housing estate in Cambridge to find it. This is Simple House, made to measure for its owners. Simple yet beautiful living spaces, tailored to their needs, spill off a dramatic 1.5-story central hall. Design details have been hand-picked, from gravel embedded in the concrete floor to striking circular roof lights, all built for £200,000. Simple House makes the most of a modest infill plot. Taking inspiration from Japanese courtyard houses, there are 2 enclosed gardens. There's an open-plan living space, master bedroom, bathroom and cloakroom. And a study, which can be used as a guest bedroom. Its owners are Jenny, who works in the theatre, and Aki, a doctor who grew up in Japan. They decided to build Simple House after struggling to find somewhere to buy in the city.
Hey.
Oh, welcome.
Oh, thank you. We've got a fixed budget in Cambridge, probably one of the most expensive areas you can be looking.
Yeah.
What was on offer?
Houses were pretty much out of the question.
Nothing with a garden.
Nothing with a garden,
Yeah.
definitely nothing with a garden. And nothing detached, certainly. We were also at the same time looking for a plot of land. And that we looked for about 3 years. And they come up so rarely in Cambridge. And finally this one came up.
So I was really excited by the idea of starting from scratch, and particularly, you know, the idea of just fitting everything to your size. It's a small plot, but we're 2 quite small people, and we could make everything fit around us, and that was quite an interesting prospect.
How wonderful to find, hidden among the uniform houses on the estate, such a one-off. One that quietly nods to Aki's Japanese heritage. There are subtle echoes of Japanese buildings in the flat, slightly overhanging roof and in the slatted wood cladding, reminiscent of traditional koshido, or latticed doors.
We didn't want to make a loud statement about Japanese design, but we appreciated that kind of detailing, and I think that subtly that is within the design.
Yeah, a bit of Japanese Cambridge fusion.
Yeah, that's right.
Why not?
Exactly.
Why not?
The subtle Japanese influences continue inside.
Oh, this is lovely.
Pared back minimalism, natural materials left on show, joists exposed. But there's also a practical reason for all this. To save money.
There wasn't a lot of finishing that happened on the interior. What you see is what was built, and it was just left like that.
Even the walls are unpainted. They're self-coloured white plaster. The overall effect is a delight, cleverly achieved with standard materials.
Most of the materials are, what you get off the shelf. Get the birch ply or the beams.
Jenny and Aki's strategic deployment of their budget impressed the RIBA judges, who praised Simple House for punching above its weight with a remarkable level of design. The space-saving bathroom has a beautiful Japanese-style sit-in bath. The simple master bedroom gives onto one of 2 courtyard gardens. The layout is ultra-efficient and doesn't waste a millimetre of the plot, thanks to the ingenuity of the architect, Tom Miller.
I showed them an idea that you take the site, first of all you start putting a roof on it, and then you cut out courtyards and you pop areas up. And this was what we were left with. This is the perfect mix of interior and exterior space, but they're treated quite equally.
Today, these generous outdoor rooms offer moments of calm, but building Simple House was less than restful.
We're on very clay soil here, and the moment you dig a hole, it fills up with water and doesn't go anywhere. I know the bricklayers had to pump it away each day when they turned up.
Are you turning up on site each morning to find that everything that you've done the day before is now submerged?
Yes, incredibly difficult. And it's just the ordinary everyday stuff of how you move around on a waterlogged site as well. When it's clay and it's sticky, it's no fun.
Despite a difficult build, Simple House was finished in 13 months. It proves that expensive materials and fancy gadgets are nowhere near necessary in the creation of a beautiful one-off home.
Tom, Aki and Jenny have executed a masterclass in focusing on what matters to them. Simple House has solved that age-old problem of how do you balance a small site and a tight budget by reaching out to the 4 corners of this plot and bringing in daylight, privacy, texture and detail.
So, 5 houses, each offering a beautiful answer to a challenging question. But one head-scratcher remains unanswered. Which of them will the RIBA judges deem worthy of a place on the shortlist for 2021's House of the Year?
Will it be River House, the elegant flood-busting bungalow on stilts? House in Assynt, the modular solution to the puzzle of building in the wilderness? Hove House, a minimalist master of camouflage hiding in plain sight? The Out Farm, a beautifully respectful barn conversion? Or Simple House, a Japanese-inspired example of how to get beauty on a budget? Armin Taha, the chair of the judging panel, has the verdict.
I think you've shortlisted 2 projects in this category of problem-solving houses. What's the first?
House in Assynt.
What elevated it to the shortlist?
Beautiful location, but of course very hard to build there.
Quite a hostile environment as well.
Yeah, the wind is howling underneath and all around, as it were, yeah. Well, it's a robust structure and already made out of quite dense, thick timbers, and then you wrap it, super insulate the outside, and then wrap it again with more timber that's allowed to weather naturally.
This is the building made, insulated, clad with timber.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much timber in here. This is the way we should all be going, because ultimately it becomes carbon negative, and it's very, very sustainable, an exemplar sustainable building.
Wow. Oh, that's really nice. That's really great. A little house in the middle of nowhere against all these big, shiny houses. That's great news. Good news for modesty.
We had no idea that we could come this far. It's fantastic.
I'm getting teary.
So, House in Assynt makes the shortlist, but there's room for one more innovative problem-solving home.
Tell me about the second house that you shortlisted.
The Out Farm.
So this is the barn.
Exactly, a stone barn. I mean, ultimately never meant for habitation, human habitation.
Now, anybody else would have taken that structure and built on into it, around it, whatever, and it would become a new building, a restored barn.
But they haven't. Their idea from the start was to maintain the history, the story of the old, and then where you need to add new, speak of today. It's a beautiful thing. A lot of light, fantastic views, and then you look up at this fantastic ceiling.
Isn't that a redeeming feature, that actually that the building isn't a set of solutions, but it is also something spiritually uplifting?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Oh, fantastic, really.
Really?
Wow.
Brilliant.
Oh, God.
Goodness.
To sort of have some recognition is really exciting and like very humbling.
We're so pleased for Tom and the practice and for Sarah, who helped so much in the early days. I mean, just amazing.
So, the Out Farm joins House in Assynt as the 6th house on the 2021 House of the Year shortlist. 2 beautiful answers to knotty architectural problems. Mathematicians love an elegant solution, and it seems to me that the problem-solving houses we've seen prove beyond doubt an important formula here, which is one very big challenge to be overcome, plus one bold and brave client, plus one architectural mastermind, all equals a building that's not just inventive, but inspired. Next time, we'll be celebrating houses that reinvent beloved types of buildings. This looks like it was made by a race of giant bees. And we'll discover the winner of House of the Year 2021.
And we go from sublime homes to extraordinary extensions. Tiny Temper follows homeowners as they unleash their inner architect. The series is available to stream on All 4 now. While starting tomorrow, all the drama from some of Britain's busiest hospitals returns. 24 hours in A&E, the brand new series begins at 9.